Ukraine's President Zelensky appeals to the United Nations to save the lives of around 200 civilians sheltering from Russian bombardment in the besieged city of Mariupol. Ukrainian officials say there's been heavy fighting with Russian forces who have actually gone into that steelworks plant in Mariupol. That's the last holdout in the city that is surrounded.
About 200 civilians are believed to be sheltering inside the plant, including children. Ukraine's President Zelensky has appealed to the UN to help rescue them. Mark Lebel has this report.
10 weeks in, Russia testing Ukraine's resolve at the Azovstal steelworks, intensifying its assault, as this unverified footage released by pro-Russian separatists shows. With what looks like thermobaric or vacuum bombs, as Ukraine's Azov regiment claims Russians have entered the southern port city's plant.
There are heavy, bloody battles. I am proud of my soldiers who make superhuman efforts to contain the pressure of the enemy. I am grateful to the whole world for the colossal support to the garrison of Mariupol.
But that garrison's families are worried, and there are fears too for the 200 trapped civilians, including 30 children, still hunkering in the plant, alongside thousands of others in need of rescue from elsewhere in the shattered city.
The second phase of our evacuation operation in Mariupol ended today with 344 people successfully evacuated from the city and the outskirts of Zaporizhzhia. Our team will greet them, like the 150 who came from Azovstal, and they will get the necessary support from our state.
Russia's military says it will open humanitarian corridors out of the besieged Azovstal steel complex for 3 days from Thursday. But to pressure Moscow to stop the fighting, the EU wants to halt the import of Russian oil by the end of the year. But it must have support from states heavily reliant on Russian oil, like Slovakia and Hungary, who say they can't agree to that, even with the offer of an extra year to comply.
What we've seen today on the table is very far from what we can live with and go with, not for the reasons of political taste or any kind of taste-like issue, but it's simply the hard physical facts on the ground. There is no substitute.
But Western countries are still intent on rearming Ukraine, as Russia continues its attacks in the east. These strikes in Dnipro 5 minutes after an air raid siren, leaving residents with little time to scramble for cover. Mark Lobel, BBC News.
Well, let's speak now to our correspondent Joe Inwood, who's in the western city of Lviv. Very good morning to you, Joe. So talk to me about the escalation in the fighting at the steelworks in Mariupol. What do we know this morning?
Well, if these reports are true, it seems we could be entering what would be the final phase in the battle for Mariupol. For many people, the fight for this southern port city has characterized the defiance of the Ukrainians in the face of this Russian invasion. They've held out for weeks now, for 10 weeks, but the defenders have been narrowed down to this small place called the Azovstal steel plant that we've spoken about so many times. The Russians said a couple of weeks ago that they were going to try and starve them out, but it seems now, if these reports are true, and as I say, we should always be careful. It's very difficult to know exactly what's going on the ground, but it does seem to be the case. If it's true that they're going in for an all-out assault, well, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be very, very difficult indeed. The commander on the ground has said that it is. But we could be entering the last days in the fight for Mariupol. Now, why does this matter? It's crucial because securing this territory, securing this city, is one of the strategic objectives of the Russians, a key aim. It gives them a land bridge from the mainland of their territory to the Crimean Peninsula. But I think more importantly than that, it's going to free up a large number of their troops that have previously been pinned down by the defenders in Mariupol. It's going to free them up to continue the assault on the rest of the east of Ukraine. So if the Azovstal steel plant falls, it will be a big moment.
Joe, you're in Lviv. I understand there have been missile strikes near where you are.
Yeah, so that was just over a day ago. We had 3 missile strikes here, and there were more air raid sirens last night. This is a city that's often felt quite removed from the war. It's a long way from the front lines, certainly, but there was a stark reminder for people here that this is a city at war, this is a country at war. I spoke to the mayor yesterday. He was angry, he was defiant, but he said what his city is going through is no different and certainly no worse than what many, many other cities are going through here. What we're seeing in the West is not actually the targeting of the city itself, but of its rail infrastructure, of the rail lines that are bringing in the heavy equipment in from the West to the East. So, if Mariupol falls, if those troops, Russian troops, are free, it's going to be even more important that the equipment that comes through here can get to the Ukrainian front lines.
In the last hour, the oil and gas company Shell has reported profits of £7.25 billion in the first 3 months of this year.
It comes, of course, after BP reported soaring profits earlier this week at a time when UK households are grappling with rising bills. So Ben's been looking at the figures. Just take us through what they're saying.
Yeah, the big driving factor behind all of this is the surging oil and gas prices. That is what has driven these profits. That, as we say, is a record quarterly profit for Shell. This is the biggest amount they've ever reported for a 3-month period. BP also reported strong results earlier this week. Let me explain the detail of that a little more. This is Shell's reported a massive £7.25 billion profit for the first 3 months of this year. To put that in context, that is almost triple what they made in the same period the year before. And world events are having a specific effect on the figures. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February and sanctions from Western countries have pushed up the price of oil and gas. Russia is the world's largest exporter of natural gas and the second biggest exporter of crude oil. As a consequence, analysts thought that Shell and BP would report combined profits of over £10.5 billion. As we've now seen, it's much more than that. It's closer, in fact, to £12 billion. This is after BP announced it had made even more than expected this week. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, households are facing extra financial pressures. The government has so far ruled out a windfall tax on the oil companies, despite calls from opposition parties for one to be imposed.